I'm afraid to even speak to you right now. I mean, because we can get deplatformed, attacked. I've been taken down so many times. What are your concerns that Americans do not see, or most Westerners do not see, that the Chinese are up to? I mean, are they the good guys? Are we the bad guys? Or what's happening there?
What I found in my time at the Pentagon, as I was studying what the Chinese Communist Party was doing, was that they had used the tools of globalization and the internet very much in the same way we had used the tools of my B-2 bomber to affect political outcomes, but also economic and social outcomes that favored the Chinese Communist Party. And so, and even to the point where, for example, my son, I remember he's a senior in college, and he sends a text to me and says, "Dad, my teacher just said that China is a democracy." And I said, "Well, you live there, I live there." So this is the power of the Chinese Communist Party to leverage, our institutions, our way of life, to not only strengthen themselves, but to do so in a way that really makes it seem like they're like us, but they are in no way like America.
We fund Chinese, but they take our technology. Is that correct?
The thing that you find within business is that there is so many incentives that have that, whether you're in the financial industry or whether you're in corporate America, that if you don't do what the Chinese Communist Party asks you to do, there's you'll either lose their investment in you, you'll lose your investment in China, or you will lose access to the Chinese market. When you tie all these things together and you realize that China is integrated in every democracy around the world, and you realize that most of the policies are set in democracies with a large influence from the wealthy elite in those countries, because they're often the ones that fund lobbying efforts into the capitals, then you begin to understand what the Chinese Communist Party has built, which is a very favorable influence machine that operates in every capital in the world and operates in all the international institutions like the UN and World Bank.
I was in Cameroon and I saw these trenching machines going down these really back roads. I said, "Who are those guys?" I said, "Well, they're the Chinese. They're putting fiber optic cable in." I'm going, "Well, what's the price of that fiber optic cable?" Right? Do you know what I mean? And the average person doesn't even think about it.
Well, and it's probably, most likely, it's free, because what the Chinese figured out was that Silicon Valley built this wonderful economic engine, and the product they were selling was their ability to use your data, and then with machine learning and artificial intelligence, turn around and influence your perceptions, your consumer habit patterns. And it really became what drives the global economy today is the use of individual data for selling the ability to influence those behaviors. Now, it's not just economic, it's not just the shoes you buy, it is increasingly how you look at the world from a social perspective and how you look at the world from a political perspective. And you begin to see the power of that in companies in China like Baidu, like Alibaba, like Tencent, like SenseTime, like ByteDance, which powers the AI behind apps like TikTok.
So many of my friends go, "What's going on? Why is social media seem to be going against us?" I call Silicon Valley a socialist media. I mean, how can they take down President Trump? How can they censor somebody? How can they get what I consider un-American or undemocratic policies to be filtrated into our system? Is Silicon Valley beholden to China? I mean, is that too dangerous a question to ask?
Well, there is a convergence. So who talks and what they say is very important in terms of, how a society is organized, and therefore we need to deconstruct the way the West was organized, because it was organized to preference certain races and certain people. The Chinese Communist Party also likes control of the narrative, because that's what Mao Zedong really understood what he used to defeat the Nationalist Party to win control of China, was control of the narrative through something he called People's War. people's war is really political warfare. And political warfare is really about controlling a narrative, controlling people's perceptions of things, and ensuring that they support your point of view. And that, what the Chinese Communist Party has done, has been able to export that through globalization and the internet. And they found, in the United States, very willing partners in this type of dialogue. For instance, you've seen recently where the Chinese Communist Party is supporting things and using talking points like from Black Lives Matter. They did that in Alaska when they had the news conference with Secretary of State Blinken. What China wants to do, what the party wants to do, is make sure that we stay divided. And applied postmodernism is a very divisive thing.
Right.
It says we're going to preference what one person says over another. And so the way this works, the way influence works today is very, very interesting. For example, with regard to the coronavirus, in 2015, Xi Jinping paid a visit to Imperial College of London and gave them millions of dollars for, among other things, epidemiology research. Now, it just so happens that the main report that was driving a lot of the hype with regard to lockdowns and masks and everything came out of Imperial College of London. You may remember it said over 2 million Americans will die because of coronavirus. Now, the tie between the influence of the party on academic institutions and international institutions is not well known. It's not well studied. It's not well documented. And so when that report comes out, and then a Harvard professor takes that report, he puts it in a tweet, and he says, "Oh my God, we need to do something about this now. What are the Chinese doing?" And then the WHO says the Chinese are using lockdowns, never been used before. A week later, they're like, knockdowns really stop the spread of the coronavirus in China. And then our CDC says, well, the WHO says we should do this. And so it begins to gather momentum. Remember, we're all connected. Everything is connected. And so it starts with that credible report coming out. And then that gets repeated by social media influencers like Professor Dingle at Harvard. And then that gets spread throughout the social media and it gets reposted. And the more times you hear it, the more times people begin to believe it, and they begin to become afraid. So you see the same type of pattern happening. And because of all these institutions and their connection, and most importantly, their financial relationship with the party, they can begin this process where they can drive policy in the direction that they want.
Correct. At military school, they always talked about divide and conquer. To keep conquered, keep dividing. So when I see identity politics, I see victim politics. I'm LBGT, I'm black, I'm Hispanic, I'm this, I'm whatever you are. And they keep dividing us.
If you say the right things, you're good. If you say the wrong things, you're bad. It doesn't matter what you look like or what your background is. That's what and even it can be counter to facts.
Right.
Like, for instance, we can say lockdowns work, and you have no data whatsoever to show that. A lot of people will point, well, it worked in China. And I said, do you believe China's GDP numbers? Do you believe any numbers that their companies put out in terms of financial requirements and 10Qs and 10Ks? How can you believe then what they did with the coronavirus, which says we had nothing since April of 2020? I mean, this is the insanity of where this has gone today. And the internet really just enables its growth and spread. If you were made emperor, what would be the first thing that you would do? And Confucius says, I would control what people say, because if I control what they say, I control what they think and do. We've gotten so far away from what America is as an ideal and as an institution. And frankly, the Chinese Communist Party loves that, because it allows them to very easily emphasize those differences and use them as vulnerabilities. And they use them against us. If we're fighting amongst ourselves, then we can't work together to counter what they're doing to us. And that's the whole goal.
It's divide to conquer, to keep conquered, keep dividing. It's military 101.